All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and tonight I want to talk to you guys about black mirrors and transformation through the looking glass. So try to be a bit of an enticing title tonight. What is it that I'm talking about? Well, tonight I want to bring together, obviously by the title you can already see two of them, the British television show Black Mirrors, which sort of became popular a few years ago, depicting sort of the dystopian future technology could take us towards, and obviously referring to these things as a black. Well, see, I can't even go very far without without somebody else messaging me. But it's sort of black mirror, right? It's a mirror. That's true for then our digital phone screens, our computer screens, our television screens. And so I was thinking and reflecting on the sort of conjecture of the black mirror and then the through the looking glass, the glass of which then the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll writes, where she moves into, again, through the looking glass, a sort of inverted world, an irrational, illogical world, a world of anthropomorphic creatures, a land of, again, a sort of upside downness. And I was thinking, okay, black mirrors, Alice in Wonderland, through the looking glass, and the magic mirror itself, a la Snow White, a la a lot of Grimm's fairy tales and all that stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight is exploring the sort of metaphorical, semiotic relationship between these black mirrors, these technological devices, how they are then transforming us through some of the theories that Marshall McLuhan put forward. So I got my opening monologue. I'm going to hit my... hopefully I hit my high notes, if, so to speak. Then we're going to do some announcements. And then the second half of today's stream is just listening to Marshall McLuhan in his own words. I got tons of videos to show you guys. And so we're just going to sit and we're going to listen to Marshall McLuhan talking about this transformation. And so what is this transformation? This transformation is a general theory, and this is kind of the basis for what we're going to be doing, is Marshall McLuhan believed that these digital technologies are actually reverting our sensory ratios back to a primitive man. And I've talked about this multiple times in different streams. I've talked about the progressive regression in regards to social values, moving back to a sort of pre-Christian world. I've talked about the sort of primatization of man himself in regards to aesthetics, but also in regards to literacy. And so Marshall McLuhan had these theories regarding our technologies, our mediums for information gathering, and how they actually affect and alter the sensory ratios we use to acquire information and experience the world. And so this, in one of his lectures, and I actually have this lecture on this YouTube channel in a video I edited, where it's talking about, I believe, Western Man. So if you look up like Marshall McLuhan and something Western Man, you may see my channel come up. It's that particular lecture where he talks about this movement from the visual man. This is the literate man. This is man that reads manuscripts, reads books, even reads nature. This was something of an understanding in ancient Greek philosophy and education, that this was through the trivium, that one of the ways in which we look at nature is that we read nature. Nature in a way is a text, it's a book, it's a manuscript, it's something that we look at and we reread it. It's a visual experience. And so he talks about how digital technologies have actually altered our sensory ratios back to a pre-literate man, a man who's focused on his ears. Now you would think, but Patrick, we use all these, the phones and the TVs and the computer screens. Isn't this really visual? Yes. But you have to follow here. The idea is that digital technologies, like auditory man, information is gathered where you are sort of the central place. In regards to auditory waves and how our ears are picking up information, you, in a way, are the center of your universe. And Marshall McLuhan theorized that these digital technologies were going to move us back to this sort of primitive man where we are the center of our universe, that space and time becomes disconnected, disjointed. And that's exactly what happens when we move through the black screens into the internet, through the technology, through the computers, through our smartphones, through our TVs. We are moving into a world that's sort of disconnected from space and time, because you can sort of do anything at any time. You can talk to anybody from any place. The internet it sort of disconnects us, right, from literal geography, if you will. That, yeah, we have cultural context and stuff like that, but in a way, it's a totally alternate experience of information acquisition, because basically there is no center, right? The center is your own personal experience of it. You see how that totally fits with the postmodern turn within philosophy, where every, truth epistemology breaks down and we're all kind of stuck in our own paradigms, our own webs of beliefs. Well, this goes very nicely with that. That through these black mirrors, we enter into a realm in which everything is happening at once. This is just like auditory primitive man, where when he stands in the jungle and listens, he is the center of everything that's happening. And it actually, Marshall McLuhan theorized that this was going to lead to less literacy. And I've done multiple streams looking, one of them was the ghettoization of America, looking at how literacy, especially in the United States, has actually been on the decline for like the last 4 or 5 years. And you're thinking, but we have all the technology, and all the technology is going in the schools, and they're using the computer. Why are they becoming less literate? Aha. Interesting. Maybe it's the technologies themselves that are doing that. And if they are, I think there's a place to then theorize that they're no longer engaging with the word to the same degree. And that maybe we're supposed to be a sort of middleman. Maybe the ideal place is to be both a visual and an auditory man. So we can then better engage with the word, the logos, which again, there's a written form of language here that people are losing the ability to interact with. But also, I would argue that as we move into the wonderland, as we move through the black mirrors, through the looking glass, the glass screens, the literal glass screens, as we move through the looking glass into these different spaces, we are entering into a sort of fantasy world ruled by magic. We are entering into a place where, yes, literacy and traditional understanding, God's energies, truth, right? Truth, logic, rationality, these things are actually inverted. And you can look at the metaverse, right? Look at Facebook's commercials for the metaverse, and it's like all social justice warrior, progressive nonsense, transgenderism. And you're thinking, wow, it's a totally irrational world. But that's exactly how Lewis Carroll wrote Through the Looking Glass. Alice enters into a world that's totally inverted through the looking glass. I'm saying that these glass screens, these black mirrors, are in a way the looking glass, and we actually are Alice. And as we move from visual man into purely auditory man, we actually really are moving into an upside down world, because we really are moving back to a place, a primitive state before the Logos incarnated. And now, so when we look at the world becoming more irrational, more illogical, more tribal, more, anti-Christian, basically in every anti-phallogocentric in every way, I think it's totally consistent with McLuhan's larger ideas regarding these screens and these technologies. So my basic premises here then is the black mirrors of technology are transforming us through the looking glass. As we look through the looking glass, we are being transformed. And as we are transformed, we're actually moving into a different world, because as our sensories transform, the worlds that we experience are transformed. And so as the people then move through this realm, they become, again, the theology of the NPC. They become the NPC. They become a person who's totally annihilated the image of God in themselves. They are synonymous with this demonic kenosis, the sort of global demonic, interconnected cybernetic reality of the official narrative, right? The official narrative, whatever the official narrative, whatever the current thing is, right? Those people, they are the creatures existing through the looking glass. They are in the metaverse, whether they have a headset on or not. They've already there. And so like Alice, there is an upside down, irrational, illogical world that she enters into through the looking glass. And there's all these anthropomorphic creatures. Well, what do we see now? Humanity and animals are the same thing, right? You're allowed to kill babies, but you're not allowed to kill animals for the planet, right? For climate change. What? But you see how this is a distortion, at least from a Christian, a logo-centered worldview. Man and animals aren't the same thing. We are both created, if we're going to use that category, yes. Are we the exact same thing in regards to essence? No, we aren't animals. We're made in the image of God. We have a higher calling. We're able to engage in these higher faculties, these uncreated energies. And so we aren't animals. But you see how the progressive regression, you see how primitive man, you see how the futuristic narrative, we essentially are animals. And they perceive us as animals because, as I talked about with the meme magic and the NPC, they control us through the pleasures, because once they cut you off from your connection with God, once they cut you off from your higher faculties that connect you back to the Trinity, you are a sort of empty vessel, right? And so then you are led by your pleasures. You're led by your sins. You literally are an animal, right? So the whole goal of the Black Mirror, of the demonic kenosis, of the progressive regression, of whatever it be, it's to get you to lose the image of God in yourself, to no longer participate in these higher faculties, to break your brain. You become the NPC and you become synonymous with this system. And that is the metaverse. It's a fantasy world, right? It's the inversion. It's a world that's not really real. This is a real world. Through the looking glass, you enter into a world that's real, but it's not really real. And that's the trap. And that's the Black Mirror. And so we see a fantasy world run by magic. I mean, look at even the narrative of Alice in Wonderland. How, like, the state of that world. You have, the Mad Hatter. You have, floating cats and talking caterpillars, a sort of magical inverted world, right? There's no distinction between man and animal, man and insect. And then you have a queen, the king of hearts and the queen of hearts. And what do you have? You have a weak, small little man. That's the king who's married to a very prominent and beloved woman. It's almost like an inverted structure. It's almost like another inversion. And isn't that the world that we live in? Don't we live in the world where the king is just a little bitty man who's timid and he's run by his wife? Isn't that the world that we live in? So I think there's so many interesting connections. And then you look at the Black Mirror, then you bring into the symbolism of the Grimm brothers and the symbolism of the magical mirror. This is, if the Black Mirrors are bringing us into a sort of, bringing us into a magical realm, and it's a sort of inverted world, these magical mirrors are also like the mirror on the wall, right? Because it perpetuates a sort of narcissism, right? The evil queen using the Black Mirror to see the world, to see reality. It's almost like maybe there's an evil queen, an evil feminine or inverted spirit that's trying to control our world, using its magical mirror, the Black Mirror, the technology itself. And so I think it's very interesting to look at all these three narratives together: the Black Mirrors, Alice in Wonderland going through the looking glass, and then the magical mirror in something like Snow White, and how all this stuff really is transforming us. In these Black Mirrors, the British television show, they almost all end unhappily, except for certain characters who watch and monitor their relationship to the technology. Okay, say that again. The Black Mirror shows it ends unhappily for almost everybody in those episodes, except for the people who become conscientious of their relationship to technology and monitor it. So because of that, their lives end up happier. exactly as I'm trying to say here. That through the unfettered use of these technologies, I get the irony of the fact we're using these technologies to talk about these technologies right now. I get that. But it's the unfettered, unconscientious relationship to these things that I think is really the problem. It's too late. We can't not be affected by the technologies anymore. The most we can strive to is sort of be a sort of one leg in the visual man, the literate man, the man who reads books, the man who uses these hotter mediums to acquire information, or the auditory man, the man who uses the television and the digital technologies, who views himself as a sort of center of the world. The best we can do is make sure we're not fully the auditory man, pre-Christ, pre-logos, primitive sensory ratios, and instead balance it or walk somewhere with legs in both worlds. Or if you're able to live that traditional homestead life, you could try to do away with the technology. I think that's not a totally bad idea. So these glass screens are actually magical mirrors. They really are mirrors on the wall. Who is the fairest of them all? What do we use these things for? Well, social media, Instagram, right? So then the girls get on here and no, I'm the fairest of them all. They see the hot chick with, and now they got to compete. You see it? And so the black mirror, a mirror shows you a reflection. The black mirror shows you, in a sense, a reflection that you don't think is actually you. This is, again, the myth of Narcissus. And this is something I'll have McLuhan touch on. The whole myth of Narcissus, Narcissism, coming from this Greek myth, is that the reflection he sees in the water he thinks isn't himself, but really it is. And so then the people who use the black mirrors to look at the world think they're not looking at themselves, but really they're looking at their own projection. Really, they are looking at themselves. Just like Narcissus, just like the evil queen with the magic mirror. And so these glass screens are magical mirrors. Like Narcissus, we think we're seeing someone else, but it's actually us the whole time. And this can even dive into theories of technology, like the idea that technology itself is the extension of mankind's mind into matter. That's what a hammer is. That's what these tools are. In a way, there's no separation. This has been argued. I'm not advocating for this, but I'm saying this is a theory that's been argued, is that you really can't divorce, disconnect man from the technologies he's created, because technologies themselves are the extensions of his mind, the extensions of his ability to understand the world, the extensions of his senses. And so that's then interesting. Our technologies are the extensions of ourselves. Our technologies are also transforming ourselves into different entities, into different sensory ratios. And so these black mirrors, I argue, condition us to ultimately become more narcissistic. And it is ultimately a sort of self-worship, because through these processes, we ultimately are losing the image of God, which is ultimately losing the uniqueness that all of us actually have. The only way that I acquire a unique identity is in my relationship to God who made me. As I move away from God, I actually disconnect from the source that made me, and I become more and more and more like everyone else. That is the NPC. That's why they're all the same person, you see. They've lost the image of God. They've lost the ability to engage in the uncreated energies. They're literally becoming the same people. And this same people is a sort of same narcissism, just like Lucifer himself. You see, Lucifer fell from heaven due to the self-worship that he wanted from the heavenly angels. And in the same way, you see, these black mirrors, through the looking glass, as we, Alice, enter into the auditorial digital world where we are the center of everything, we ourselves become more narcissistic. We are Narcissus. We think we're looking at everybody else, but really we're projecting ourselves and we're worshiping ourselves. And so social media likes is a perfect example of how these black mirrors are distorting, again, people in regards to their narcissism, their image of themselves. Not getting into the sensory ratios, which we'll get into here in a few. But the social media likes, the girls, the guys, likes being prominent on these social media platforms develops a sort of narcissism. But it's not just social media and the validation of others that forms narcissism. What about Grubhub? What about the narcissistic understanding that somehow you can acquire all your pleasures without leaving your house, without leaving your pod, without leaving your apartment? That also sort of insinuates a sort of narcissism, a sort of grandiose self-importance, a sort of lack of disconnection and engagement with the world. So we see how the black mirrors, the technologies, they're making life easier and easier and easier. But what it's doing, it's putting you deeper and deeper and deeper into a prison cell. And so same thing with the instant gratification, again, whether it be Grubhub or whatever. And all these things are dissolving. It's a dissolution of space-time. Dissolution of space-time. When you enter through the black mirror, as I said, as you move through the black mirror, right, you're entering into a world where space and time don't really exist. There's nothing you can do that you can't do at any point. There's no place that you can't interact with or connect with. It is the dissolution of space and time. It is an alternate reality. It is the metaverse. And the black mirror is a perfect analogy for the absence of somebody actually looking into it. Because what it's doing, again, is taking the image of God out of you, which the blackness is indicative of a void. It's the void of authentic self. It's the void of an authentic self. And so we enter a world of inverted energies. So as you enter through the black mirror, through the looking glass, into the sort of magical world, everything is inverted. Truth is just of the system's consensus. Truth isn't actual truth. Justice isn't actual justice. It's part of whatever goes along with the narrative, right? That's justice. Justice is that I can kill my baby. Justice is that I can make sure that the 8-year-old is on puberty blockers and that he's, his genitals are cut off. That is social justice. Everything is inversion, right? There actually is no mercy and compassion unless then you agree with the narrative. Mercy and compassion must be demonstrated to people who actually maybe we don't agree with. That's the whole thing that's merciful and compassionate about it. But if we're only kind to the people we agree with, we're not merciful and compassionate. And that's exactly what we see. You see, the whole metaverse, the whole thing is an inversion of the energies themselves. They're all altered. And that's why it's an inversion of logic. It's an inversion of rationality. That's why, as Lewis Carroll wrote, when Alice goes through the looking glass, it is an irrational, illogical world. Everything is upside down, and that's the point of it, right? I think one of the examples, like when she goes through the looking glass, is running is you run to stay in place. You run not to move, you run to stay in place. And we start looking at the world right now. What the heck is happening? You make money by being on welfare, by not doing anything. You can make more money than going out and getting a job. It's like running in place. It's like through the looking glass, right? And so it's a sort of inversion of the uncreated energies of God themselves. And what that is doing then is leading to a worship of abstraction. And that's what these people ultimately do, because the black mirror, the metaverse, all this whole going through the looking glass is part of this process of the NPC. It is part of this demonic kenosis, is that they're getting people move into this world. You know, the transhumanists, it's on the other side of this mirror. It's through the looking glass. And they worship abstraction. They worship the world. They worship Gaia. They worship social justice. They worship democracy. What? Huh? But you see exactly what it is. Democracy. All that is for consensus rule. It's about the rule of the consensus. And so black mirrors lead ultimately to the metaverse, which is the upside down world that I believe, or I'm associating or metaphorically using here, that Lewis Carroll described when writing about Alice in Wonderland. And the black mirrors are indicative, as I said, of the void of self, the loss of the image of God. And that's why it's ultimately is a black mirror. It's not a black mirror just because it's black and it's a reflective surface. It is that. But it's a black mirror because there's nobody looking into it. Ultimately, the deeper you look into the black mirror, the more there's nobody looking into it at all. Let that process. The deeper we look into the black mirror, the more we lose ourselves in our technologies, the more that there's actually nobody there looking into the black mirror, because of the loss of self, the loss of the image of God. And so that's what I want to get into today, guys. Smash that like. I hope everybody's enjoying today's stream. I hope, again, I think this is a really interesting topic. I think there's a lot here. Maybe I'm over-exaggerating certain metaphors or whatnot, but I do think that there's something useful here. But at the same time, I must say that God uses all evil for good. So even though I'm talking about these black mirrors in a sort of detrimental, negative way in which they're altering our sensory ratios, at the same time, God uses all things for good. And so we are here talking about it. We are inside the black mirror, and we're sort of looking at each other, but we're looking at ourselves and we're learning. And so this is all happening at the same time. And so the technologies, I don't like to make value statements, for example, like the plants, like psychedelics. The mushrooms must be evil. Well, no, it's not the mushrooms are evil. It's that the mushrooms aid in a process that dissolves boundaries that open you up to a demonic reality. That's what's evil. And so same thing with these technologies. I don't want to say technology itself is evil. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that technology is a black mirror. It is opening us up into an alternate reality, which inside that alternate reality, evil then can thrive in a way that it can't in the same way in this real world, the world created by God. And so I want to make that subtle distinction here, because sometimes that gets confused as people hear me as saying that all technology is evil. Don't engage in technology, run to the top of the mountains and throw everything away. No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that these technologies are doorways, windows, black mirrors, looking glasses into an abyss. That inside that reality, evil thrives. And that's what we have to be conscientious about. That's why we have to regulate and become more conscientious about our relationship to these technologies, because they are altering our sensory ratios and they are altering us as people and as society. And this is why the NPC phenomenon is becoming so apparent, and it's becoming more and more apparent. So, with all that being said, now let me take care of a little housekeeping here, guys. Smash that like. If you would like to support today's stream, please do so by throwing in a super chat. Please use the super chat or the Streamlabs link for all super chats. But if you prefer to use YouTube, that's fine as well. Feel free to use YouTube. I just want to tell everybody the best way to support Church of the Eternal Logos is to become a website member. I have two types of memberships. The $5 membership offers you access to, the Logos membership offers you access to a video library of exclusive video content, of which I just did a Logos review of the Northman, the sort of pagan, the brutalistic savagery, the pagan movie of the Northman, Hamlet, and his revenge on the bastard brother of his father who killed him. So if you want to hear my take on the Northman, or my Logos take on the Northman, you can do that with a $5 subscription to the website. If you'd like to participate in the premium membership, you'd have access to all those videos, as well as our Thursday night meetings. Every other Thursday, premium members, we get together in a Zoom meeting and we chat, and we have great, intense, lovely, deep conversations. And if you would like to be participating in that with other premium members, you can do so with the premium membership. Also, if anybody would like to set up a one-on-one session for tomorrow, I still have some slots available if anybody is interested in a one-on-one session. Also, in the one-on-one session, we can talk about anything. You want to talk about theology, world religions, magic, mysticism, fitness, goal setting, whatever it be, we can do that. Also, this Friday, not tonight, but Friday, we are going to be doing a stream. The next sponsored stream on the spirituality of Russell Brand. Now, the gentleman also asked for Eckhart Tolle, but I've kind of already talked about Eckhart Tolle and some of the other ones, but I've never talked about Russell Brand, so I'm really going to hammer the spirituality of Russell Brand and diving deeper into Russell Brand. That's going to be this Friday evening, this coming Friday evening, and that is a sponsored stream. So I want to state that if anybody would be interested in sponsoring a stream, you can do so with that link right there. And I would greatly appreciate that if you got a good idea for a stream topic. Also, I want to say that I'm still open or contemplating, thinking about setting up a COTEL meetup in Florida sometime at the beginning of September. So if you guys are in Florida, I'm thinking about setting something up at the end of Florida. I mean, yeah, the end of Florida. The end of September is my 33rd birthday. And so in celebration of my birthday month, I thought we should do a COTEL meetup somewhere in Florida. I haven't got the details yet. We still got some people that are interested, but we're going to meet somewhere near the beach. Tell people the location. You get your own hotel. You get your butt there. Your wife, your family. Bring your kids. It's not going to do anything crazy. We're not going to clubs, but we are going to go on the beach. We are going to have some drinks. We are going to enjoy each other, meet people, fellowship, and then we're going to go to church. And so, if that's something you'd be interested in, keep an ear out, because I'm going to develop that a little bit more in regards to the details of a COTEL meetup in Florida and whatnot. So anyways, with that being said, guys, now let's just get into today's topic. So please smash that like, guys, if you have not. Shout out to everybody over on The Rock. So we got 7 people over on Rockfin. Shout out to you guys. So let's see. What do I want to start off with here? Let me pull up my window. Okay. And so the first thing I will do is I'll probably just go through some of these Wikipedia articles. So the first one's the magic mirror of Snow White, right? And so, like I said, these black mirrors, I think, is really interesting to see some of the semiotic relationships. So the black mirror is a mystical object that is featured in the story of Snow White, depicted as either a hand mirror or a wall-mounted mirror. Well, yeah, so whether your TV screen is mounted or you're looking at your smartphone, doesn't matter. The magic mirror belongs to the evil queen, who is constantly asking it, who is the fairest in the land? Is that what we're doing through our black mirrors? Are we comparing ourselves and looking at others and questioning who is the fairest in the land? When the mirror eventually identifies her young stepdaughter Snow White as the fairest, the queen jealously tries to have her killed, first via her huntsman, then several personal attempts, concluding with a poisoned apple. Apple technology, Apple computers, Apple smartphones, Apple televisions, the iMac I'm using right now. Interesting. The mirror is key to her plots. It tells her Snow White's location. Does the black mirror, does the mirror demonstrate my location? Does it give away where I'm at? And after each attempt, she checks with the mirror and is again told that Snow White remained the fairest. At the very end, when Snow White is married, the mirror tells her that the young queen is the most beautiful. The evil queen is terrified, but her jealousy drives her to attend the wedding, where she is caught and executed. Can you guys hear me now? Looks like the microphone. So how long did you guys, how long could you guys not hear? How long could you guys not hear? Let me backtrack here. Oh, jeez. Oh no! So it happened a while ago then. Dang it. Okay, well let me go back here. Let me rehash. Somebody tell me 2 minutes. What was the last thing you guys heard? Tell me what was the last thing you guys heard once you started. Okay. Anyways, let me begin. So did you guys hear what I had to talk about with the after Evil Queen? About 2 minutes from when you began to read. Okay. So let's just move over here to the Looking Glass. Let me restart over here with the Looking Glass. Okay. As soon as I started reading the wiki. Okay. So I talked about the magic mirror as a mystical object featured in the story of Snow White, depicted as either a hand mirror or a wall-mounted mirror. As I said, could be your smartphone, could be your television screen that is attached to the wall. Doesn't matter. But then I was reading the essence of this fairy tale here. And so the magic mirror belongs to the evil queen who constantly asks it, who is the fairest in the land? Who is the fairest of them all? And I say, is it not what we're using our black mirrors for, right? This is the magic mirror on the wall. In the mirror on the wall, do we not then look into it to see who's getting the likes, who's getting the attention, who is the fairest of them all? Are we not continually looking into our black mirror to compare ourselves to other people? When the mirror eventually identifies her young stepdaughter Snow White as the fairest, the queen jealously tries to have her killed, first via her huntsman, then several personal attempts, concluding with a poisoned apple. And then I say, the poisoned apple, interesting, a recapitulation of the original sin, but also, again, think about Apple technologies. My Apple smartphone, my Apple television, the iMac that I'm using. Is the evil queen still trying to poison me, Snow White, through the poisoned apple? That she concocted in a way in relationship to her magical mirror. The mirror is key to her plots, it says. It tells her where Snow White's location is. Does our phones not tell us where our location is? They absolutely do. Thank you very much, Rebecca Dawn. Sorry, your super chat was behind the Wikipedia. I just fixed that. And after each attempt, she checks with the mirror and is again told that Snow White remains the fairest. So even the evil queen, again, you look back through the social media and you can still see that Snow White's the fairest, right? You can still see that which ideas are still popular, which ideas aren't popular. And I would say that the powers that be are certainly using the black mirrors to look at the mind of mankind, to look at what is popular, what do people like, what do people not like. And we know that they know that what they're pushing is not popular because they can look at the analytics, just like the evil queen can look through her mirror. And so at the very end, when Snow White is married, the mirror tells her that the young queen is the most beautiful. The evil queen is terrified, but her jealousy drives her to attend the wedding where she is caught and executed. And so using that mirror symbolism, the magic mirror, I think it's really interesting to see how it relates to Alice in Wonderland. And so Alice in Wonderland is obviously about a young girl named Alice who falls through a rabbit hole into a fantasy world of anthropomorphic creatures. Oh, so again, the blending and dissolving a boundary between man and animals. It is seen as an example of the literary nonsense genre. Aha. And so then we go through the sequel. The sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is Through the Looking Glass. And this is the one that I want to focus on for today's conversation. Because as it reads, and this is very insightful, Through the Looking Glass is a novel by Lewis Carroll and the sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Alice again enters a fantastical world, this time by climbing through a mirror into the world that she can see beyond it. So it's like we're looking into a mirror, and when we stare, we can see a world beyond it. We can see, again, through the social medias, through all the different apps and devices, we can sort of see a reality through here, right? We look into the mirror just like Alice, and we can see a world beyond it. There she finds that just like a reflection, everything is reversed, including logic. For example, running helps one remain stationary. Walking away from something brings one towards it. Chessmen are alive. Nursery rhyme characters exist, and so on. So it's a total opposite of this reality. It's an inversion. It's a reflection. Through the Looking Glass includes such verses as Jabberwocky, The Walrus and the Carpenter, and the episode involving Tweedledee and Tweedledum. The mirror above the fireplace that is displayed at Helton Lawn in Charlton Kings resembles the one drawn by John Tenniel and is cited as the possible inspiration from Carroll. And so it's a house that was owned by Alice Liddell's grandparents and was regularly visited by Alice and Lewis Carroll. And so this Looking Glass was actually the first of the Alice stories to gain widespread popularity and prompted a newfound appreciation for its predecessor when it was finished. And so Through the Looking Glass, again, is an underappreciated sequel to Alice in Wonderland, and it is the inverted world. It's a fantasy world. It's ruled by magic. It's an authoritarian realm ruled by a feminine, like a feminist queen, right? A dominating female. And so now what I want to do is I've pretty much laid out my argument for today's stream. You guys get it. I'm going to continue to make references to it. But I want to now allow Marshall McLuhan and his deep insight on media and digital technology, allow that to marinate for us. Let's listen to him talk about these ideas. And so he associates. And so let me read this first quote by Marshall McLuhan talking about Lewis and Carroll and Alice in Wonderland and this whole Through the Looking Glass, because now he's getting ready to talk about the transition from visual man into auditory man and how he believes this is the metaphor for moving into moving through the looking glass, because the auditory man lives in a world that's disconnected, that's illogical, and that is exactly through the looking glass. So let me read this quote to you guys real quick here. I'll zoom in for you. It's a great quote. This is by Marshall McLuhan. Lewis Carroll took the 19th century into a dream world that was as startling as that of Bosch, Hieronymus Bosch, the painter, but built on reverse principles. Alice in Wonderland offers as norm that continuous time and space that had created consternation in the Renaissance. Pervading this uniform Euclidean world of familiar space and time, Carroll drove a fantasia of discontinuous space and time that anticipated Kafka, Joyce, and Eliot. Carroll, the mathematical contemporary of Clerk Maxwell, was quite avant-garde enough to know about the non-Euclidean geometries coming into vogue in his time. He gave the confident Victorians a playful foretaste of Einsteinian time and space in Alice in Wonderland. Bosch had provided his era a foretaste of the new continuous time and space of uniform perspective. Bosch looked ahead to the modern world with horror, as Shakespeare did in King Lear, and as Pope did in the Dunciad. But Lewis Carroll greeted the electronic age of space-time with a cheer. Marshall McLuhan. So now I have a series of Marshall McLuhan videos that I want us to watch and listen to. I think they're going to be insightful and interesting. So without further ado, oh, my light turned off too. Let's get into this.
One of the big flips is taken. taking place in our time is the changeover from the eye to the ear. And most of us, having grown up in a visual world, are now suddenly confronted with the problems of living in an acoustic world, which is, in effect, a world of simultaneous information. The visual world has very peculiar properties, and the acoustic world has quite different properties. The visual world, which belongs to the old 19th century, and which had been around for quite a while, say from the 16th century anyway, the visual world has the properties of being a sort of continuous and connected and homogeneous, all parts more or less alike, and static. Things stayed put. If you had a point of view, that stayed put. The acoustic world, which is the electric world of simultaneity, has no continuity, no homogeneity, no connections, and no stasis. Everything is changing. So that's quite a big shift. I mean, to move from one of those worlds to the other is a very big shift. It's the same shift that Alice in Wonderland made, you know, when she went through the looking glass. She moved out of the visual world into the acoustic world when she went through the looking glass. So it's helpful to know the origins of the alphabet and of civilization and rationality in that sense, because we have come in the 20th century to the end of that road. And it's a considerable revolution to have been through 2,500 years of phonetic literacy, only to encounter the end of the road.
All right, so we are just getting started. I got so many good videos here. So this was, again, Marshall McLuhan, hitting on the transformation of the visual man, the dominant sensory ratio being our eyes, to the dominant sensory ratio being our ears, and how this relates to Alice going through the looking glass. So now let's listen to him talking about electric mythology. Electric mythology, ooh.
When you live in an electric all-at-once environment, you create an overload of information in the environment, which drives everybody to various strategies for coping with information overload. The basic strategy for coping with information overload is myth, so that our youngsters today have automatically rediscovered the meaning of myth. They live mythically. They're still being educated and taught non-mythically, but they live mythically. They experience a huge disproportion or discontinuity between living integral, electrical, mythical lives and being pushed into old situations of specialized fragmentation and compartmentalization and classification. As you push the young out of their electronic environment into the educational establishment, they experience this strange dichotomy, this strange split, which creates what Paul Goodman calls growing up absurd. I had a chat with him the other day, and he was not too happy about having it explained to him. He preferred the myth to the explanation. But a myth is a happening. A myth is a form of all-at-onceness, an instantaneous grasp of a complex situation. That's myth. Myth is instant. It takes in huge and complex factors in one image, as it were. Now, under conditions of literacy, under conditions of analysis and objectivity, myth explodes into bits. Today, under conditions of electric circuitry, myth is once more integral, effective, operative. And so in our information overload environment, our young people are living mythically without any warning. Nobody's told them. And nobody's explained why it should happen to them.
I want to play this last part again.
If you give, then
What the?
Our young people are living mythically.
I argue that, again, through these Black Mirrors technologies, we look at millennial and Gen Zs, it's this creating of identity, the multiplicity of genders, all this different stuff, in a way, is the self-myth that people are telling themselves. right? The quest for meaning, this quest for experience, the transgenderism, the polyamory, the the various forms of lifestyles. This is a mythic experience. This is a way for people who are, derooted from any tradition. They have no tradition at all. They have no culture. And so what do? They re-mythologize the world through themselves. Again, entering into the black mirrors, entering into this reality, they then create and construct new myths regarding themselves and their origin stories and how they relate to other people. That, again, it's the electric mythology. I thought this was so brilliant when I heard this video. Young people are becoming and forming their own myths due to the engagement with these technologies. So next video. This is on the therapy of the word. So now this is talking a little bit about logos and written word versus oral words. Check this out.
I'm also revamping my history of the trivium for publication. And the trivium is grammar, logic, rhetoric, talking about basics. And grammar, by the way, is one of the ground things that gets pulled out by the logicians. Always pull out the grammar ground and throw it away. Grammatica, by the way, means reading the book of nature. Reading the whole text of nature as a book. That was called grammatica.
Boy, has that ever changed? Grammarians pay no attention whatsoever to the whole text of nature now. It's totally an abstract business, isn't it?
Well, no, it's. I think we're coming back more and more to it very much. But the idea of taking total field theory. Field theory in physics is book of nature. Interdisciplinary is book of nature. Not allowing specialism to take over. But grammar, logic, rhetoric had been from the ancient times a sort of basic curriculum concerned with eloquence and with the word, the logos. And the study of the word as resonating with wisdom and incidentally resonating with therapeutic power goes way back. There's a book by Antralgo called The Therapy of the Word in Classical Antiquity. They used Tralgo.
I forget.
He's a medical historian. Therapy of the Word.
The word.
That is a basic book like Havelock, Preface to Plato. Therapy of the Word concerns the work of the witch doctors and the shamans who did cast the spells and so on, help people to get well. And the spells were cast in various art forms, lyric, epic, dramatic, odes, and so on, were all part of the shaman's equipment. The genre of what we call the genre of literature began in the spells cast by witch doctors, the shamans. And eloquence was thought of as having the power to heal sick minds. The whole idea of eloquence in Cicero's De Oratore is the idea of wholeness, healing. And the therapy of the word was this is of course especially true of Christianity, the whole idea of the word, the divine word as healing. The Logos was thought of as therapeutic.
I love that, right? The Logos, the Word, Christ, is a source of healing. And I think at this point, I mean, reading books, I think in a way is a source of healing. Certainly Scripture, certainly that word, but the Word, the Logos, in a way of just combating some of the, again, this sort of effect on our sensory ratios. So I love that comment.
And it was thought of as most therapeutic when sung and performed richly, so in opera and so on.
There's a book out called Poetry and Therapeutic Experience.
Yeah?
The editor's Kelly Yard and Yarn.
Lerner, like Max Lerner, the same name.
Right.
Arthur Lerner. Make a note. The poetry as therapeutic. Ezra Pound had a phrase, is the poets are the antennae of the race. Meaning they pick up the messages first. They are the means of orientation in a crazy world. They can tune you in on situations by adjusting their rhythms and perform absolutely necessary functions for the society.
Anticipate then, for example, the forms which lie ahead, the structures, the interconnections, and if you're sensitive to what the artist is doing and can dig it, you've got a leg up on finding out where we may be or be going.
Yes, the painter or the poet should be able to give you at least a 30 years warning on where you are headed, because they pick up the messages that much earlier, at least a generation before the establishment.
And so from there, I ask, who are the greatest generation or the artists of our generation, and what medium are they using? You know, I don't have an answer for this, but this is something to reflect upon. Who are the greatest artists of this generation, and what mediums are they using to signal the future? Interesting point. I would probably say, to some degree, the greatest artists are those that are constructing video games and virtual reality. I mean, in a way, it's not like I know who their name is, but I don't know. It's something to think about, certainly. So anyways, that one was all in the therapy of the word, which I really love. So now, the next one, again, I'm just lining up videos that totally, Marshall McLuhan was not Orthodox, but he was a devout Catholic later in his life. And so this next one is how the auditory world, the digital world, the digital technologies depersonalize us. Because I'll let him talk about it. But again, this whole theory that I'm talking about, the black mirrors depersonalize us or take away our personhood, the image of God in which we're made in, I associate that with this talk right here. So check this out.
Well, we might come back for a moment to what do you think the effect of not having a body is on the user?
Want to take the telephone?
Telephone, radio, or TV. You don't have a physical body at all. Okay?
So notice that he's talking about through the mediums, and this is in the 60s, guys. He's talking about through the mediums of the telephone, the radio, and the television. You don't need a body because it's just such a sort of an intellectual process, a mental stimulation. Think about that. Think about the attack on the body in the 21st century. Think about, again, as you listen to Marshall McLuhan right here, he's talking in the 1960s and the 1970s. And just think about and try to associate what he's saying then with the world in the 21st century right now in 2022.
Are you inviting in an open response?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, a hunch.
It says depersonalization.
Yeah, complete.
The observation is it would be depersonalization.
It's, you are there, the sender is sent. By the way, on all electric media, the sender is sent. That is the message. You are the message. They send you. On the telephone, you are sent. And the person to whom you are speaking, they are sent to you. The sender is sent. Also, as you say, you lose your identity. You're nobody. The person who is sent is nobody.
Right. That is the NPC, right? That is the NPC. They're all the same nobody. They're all the same person. The lack of God's image.
Why is the person who fights somebody has a greater sense of identification than the person who's talking on the telephone?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Hardware.
Why?
Hardware is paper and pen and ink, and courier sending this missive to another party somewhere else.
You mean it's not a transient
It's not instant.
thing? Okay, it's not.
The electric is always instantaneous. There's no delay. That's why you don't have a body. Instantaneous communication is minus the body. So that began with the telegraph. The telegraph also had that built-in dimension of the instantaneous, and it completely transformed news and information. The mere speed. It didn't matter what was written, the fact that it went at the speed of light transformed everything. It caused the Civil War. Hidden ground of the American Civil War was the telegraph. No historian knows this. Read a book by Kenneth Stamp called The Causes of the American Civil War, and you will find no mention of the telegraph anywhere. The telegraph is acoustic, not visual. At the speed of light, the ear comes into play. It's not the eye.
Let me grab on to another point to be sure that we've gotten it. What you're saying is that with the telegraph, the telephone, that the major message is...
This is increasingly true of news under TV conditions. The content is of no importance. It's all fantasy. At the speed of light, all hardware news is translated into fantasy. It's inner trip. However, that's taking quite a leap forward. Let's notice that when you move at the speed of light on the telephone, you do not have a private identity. And when you don't have a private identity, or rather when you don't have a body, you don't relate to natural law. Your gravity has no control over you at the speed of light. You are suddenly outside of the natural scheme of things.
Right, that's that again. That as we enter through the black mirror, we enter into a space that's timeless and spaceless. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't time on the internet, but I'm saying that time falls apart. Right, I can message somebody. Time isn't a problem inside this space. He's talking about this in the '60s, guys. Really try to listen to what he's saying. This is incredible, incredible stuff that he's talking about. I saw somebody, and just to help Mickey, he was talking about Thomas Henderson said the quote, "The person sent is nobody," because what he's saying, Marshall McLuhan is saying, is that the content of the message doesn't matter. Once we enter into these digital technologies, when we send something, we're sending ourselves. We're sending, again, this has to do with about the space and time, the quickness of the message, is that you no longer have a body. Right? If I hand a letter to somebody, I'm constrained by the same forces of natural law, of gravity. That's what he's getting at. But in these digital realms, it doesn't exist. And that's why you're a nobody. You don't actually have a body. There's no body. You see what I'm saying? There's no body there. You're a nobody. Everybody's a nobody as they enter into the black mirror.
You're a Superman. This does all sorts of things to the human psychology. Completely transforms people. It's a completely hidden ground. It has nothing to do with the content. What they say on the phone couldn't matter less. This transformation, complete transformation of the user, is never mentioned in all the literature on the telephone. Not a word about it. Because it's hidden.
Okay, so now I want to play this one first. So this is, again, him talking about Narcissus, right? Again, how he thought he was seeing somebody else, but he was seeing himself. And again, as we look into a mirror, we see a reflection. we see a reflection of ourselves. But that self, in a way, again, we're losing the image of God, so we're losing ourselves. So then the self that we actually see is the self that's emerging as we lose the image of God from us. We're still looking at ourselves. So check this out.
The things you make, they mimic you. Though, frankly, it's sometimes hard to see the resemblance.
And this is the old myth of Narcissus.
All our jaguars come with tradition behind them. And
the word narcissus means narcosis, numbness, drugged. And Narcissus was drugged into thinking that that image outside himself was somebody else. Narcissus did not fall in love with his own image. He thought it was somebody else.
It's simply amazing what's gone on into this car.
And the same with us. In our technological and gadgetry and gimmickry and so on, we don't think that is merely a part of our own physical organisms extended out there.
It's a wonderful car.
We're like Narcissus, completely numb.
When you take one out for a drive, which we'll do momentarily, you will then see why Jaguar will be your next purchase.
Now, when we put out a new part of ourselves, extend a new part of ourselves by technology into the outer environment, we protect ourselves by numbing that area. The more I looked at this, the more difficulty I had in explaining why people ignored it.
I don't know if you guys picked that up, but that was so profound. Tying narcissism, Narcissus, with a numbing. I never knew that until I watched that clip, that the narcissism, in a way, is a numbing you. You know, somebody who's narcissistic is certainly numb to the ills of other people. But him talking about Narcissus, Narcissus literally fades away into nothing. Exactly, Anna, the nobody. The nobody anymore. You're in the metaverse. So this is one on the coming of sound. So he's talking about, again, entering into the acoustical age, of the age of sound. Check this out.
One of the observations that comes to mind that has been made about sound, when sound came to film, photograph, when the photograph suddenly had a soundtrack put on it around it, when radio was put around film, the effect of sound on images was extraordinary, and it, as you remember perhaps, was very disrupting. It caused much heartburn and heartache, and much tossing out of old stars, John Gilbert's and so on, because the radio image is a hot image, the photograph is a hot image, and when those two hot images get together, they do things to each other. They compel the movie camera to become a much more hi-fi, much more precise. One of the reasons for the charm of the old silence is that they're so lo-fi. They're very much like TV, which is real lo-fi. The silence are closer to TV, well, so is Batman, so are the comics, than they are to movies. And one of the observations that has been made about the coming of sound to movies was that instead of just presenting a sequence or story in a series of pictures, the tendency of sound was to cause the camera to dwell on each shot in depth and to include the whole story, as it were, in each shot. The shot became inclusive rather than exclusive. And this compelled all sorts of subtle mastery of form that was a considerable strain on the industry. It, well, I think you might say that
it knocked some countries right out of the movie business, partly because of the vast new expense of sound and the new virtuosity needed for photography. Some of the leading countries in film production were knocked right out of the business. They didn't have the resources. However, that's merely incidental. Since TV, however, there has been much weakening of the storyline in film. TV is not a narrative medium. It doesn't need narratives. The individual shot is very inclusive, just like a cartoon. A cartoon is not a picture, and it has no point of view. It includes all possible points of view in each cartoon. Dagwood or Lil Abner or anybody, each cartoon is complete. It's total. It's the whole image of that person in all his possible modalities. This isn't true of photography. Photography is highly specialist. It selects an aspect, a moment in the life of the thing. The cartoon does not select a moment in the life of the thing, and the photograph does. The movie does. And this high selectivity in time, just the isolated moment, creates a very strange world. Storyline is very helpful and needful in film when it uses hi-fi photography, but in lo-fi, as in a Chaplin, the need for intense connectedness is much smaller.
When he's talking about this lo-fi and hi-fi, I think what's really interesting is he's talking about how television and then comics are more intricately related because it provides a multiplicity of point of views at once. Makes sense as we dive deeper into the digital information age. The prevalence of anime and cartoon shows for adults becomes more and more and more prevalent because at the presuppositional level, through the use of these mediums, again, through the altered sensory ratio, it's more comfortable than a hi-fi or a high-resolution form of information transmission.
In TV, the need for connectedness is much less than in movie, for the same reason, and the viewer can fill in at liberty many of the connecting missing bits. In the case of the influence of TV on movies, it might I expect it might be illustrated by the sudden growth of the interest in and the vogue for Dr. Zhivago's, Fellini's, Bergman's, in which storyline is rather incidental and insignificant compared to the mood, the mode, the modulation and variation of single situations and images. This variation of theme, of mode, is taking the place of storyline since TV. And I think you'll find that our children, the TV generation, are not nearly so interested in narrative or storyline, whether in library form or in film form, as their older brothers and sisters. The loss of interest in narrative and the sudden upgrading of facts, you know, the romance shows, the thing novel, the research novel, the sudden interest in just raw data in cold blood, in place of story. And again, going with this, no interest in point of view. The angle is not important. The reviewers of Capote's In Cold Blood were puzzled in some cases, and some observed that the murderer probably was the author, or alternatively, the reader. It couldn't have been those people in Kansas. Now, this, again, a very confusing behavior on the part of our young, this indifference to ordinary responsibility and ordinary cause and effect in the older connected sense, storyline sense, this sense of involvement is so great that they no longer are too concerned about who done it or why. And this kind of involvement is almost an Oriental thing, I think, in the case of the TV generation. It goes along with a considerable loss of the sense of identity, or a considerable loss of any feeling of importance attaching to identity. As you know, the existentialists have long urged that what we call our personal private identity is really just a kind of visa or classification, arbitrary set of data which have a rather incidental relation to anybody. But this mood, I'm not trying to argue a case here, I'm simply pointing to this change of mood, and this loss of sense of identity is perhaps in its most extreme form manifested in the LSD and the drug, the sort of crazes, where people deliberately scrub off the tape of personal awareness.
All right. I got some more here we're going to be diving through. This one's a really interesting. This one's on metaphysics and metaphor. On metaphor. Check this one out.
Medium, it's an inner-oriented medium. You are the vanishing point. Television is a serious medium. It's an inner-oriented medium. You are the vanishing point. It goes inside you. You go on an inner trip. It is the prelude, the vestibule to LSD.
A great deal of what he was doing was quite frankly throwing things out to see what they looked like the next day and how people would react to them. Many of his pronunciamenti were not meant to be, they were not analytically structured. They were metaphors. And he was convinced that the metaphors were worth wrestling with, but he was not always convinced they were true.
You see, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again because they were bureaucrats. They weren't turned on. But with electric circuits, Humpty Dumpty goes back together again with a rush.
Most people did not get their understanding of McLuhan from reading his books. The books, particularly as the 60s wore on, became less and less coherent. And this is partly because McLuhan was not interested in writing books. His favorite mode of communication was talking ideas out.
He wanted to get his ideas across to many people, so he did appear on television all the time. And I think that it cost him.
And when you see that juice being poured out on spaghetti, that is good TV. You glug, glug, glug. That is great TV.
Very good, thank you.
I'm going to read the book again. I still don't understand it, but...
TV itself is a kind of happening, technically. And it tends to involve people in its own vortex. The media themselves can now create events that are so much bigger than people, so much bigger than the audience, that it really is a new mythic form. The coverage of the Vietnam War is done by more people than who are actually fighting in Vietnam. The numbers of people covering the Vietnam business around the world and participating in it through newscasts, the numbers are many, many millions. And so the war then becomes a fiction, a colossal fiction.
The user of electronic services is largely deprived of his private identity.
And his physical body. Remember the Cheshire Cat that came on smiling minus its body?
Yes, and
that's
disappeared
us.
all the...
That's us.
Really?
Just like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland.
4 smiles?
It's people who are sent, not the message.
I must say, you send me. I find whenever you're on, we talk faster, we do...
I think about it for hours afterward, you know, it's been fun.
Do you know what's going on in some great American homes? Well, let me tell you. Sears' best interior latex paint.
It must be hard to be the almighty totem pole. I mean, what do you do if you're become the media guru, but you're aware of the fact that you're being asked to give sound bites and God knows what else, and how do you get out of it if the media is in fact what you're talking about?
It's one of the most painful parts of understanding McLuhan is when you read his letters beginning in the early 70s and he realizes his message has not gotten through. Nobody's really listening.
What do you think is the most, I want to use the word effective, but that's not the right word, but I'm talking about television here. What has the greatest impact on audience? Is a TV program? Is television best when it covers an event like a space shot or the Olympics or a baseball game? Is it best when it tries to entertain with movies at night, when it tries to inform with news programs?
I'm sure that McLuhan was not satisfied that he'd been understood towards the end of his life. My own feeling is that he felt that people had not bothered to understand. I think he felt keenly that his academic colleagues never really were ready to give him a hearing or to respect him. He became involved in a club called the Best Club at the University of Toronto. And this Best Club consisted of people who were heads of their own centers. McLuhan enjoyed these get-togethers. This is obviously a select group of academics. But amongst themselves, these people could not come to a conclusion as to whether McLuhan was a really great thinker or whether he was a charlatan. That question was hung over McLuhan to the very end.
By 1974, a series of works have appeared saying, in effect, that either McLuhan is wrong or McLuhan should not be taken seriously because he has a hidden agenda, whether as a Roman Catholic or as a conservative in terms of his values. The chief charge against McLuhan was simply to say he's a technological determinist. What he says is the machines make the rules. McLuhan's enduring phrase is, "Nothing is inevitable provided we're prepared to pay attention." And he never gave up to the end of his life. With Laws of Media, McLuhan was attempting to advance a new science.
Marshall is a tool maker. He likes tools. He wants to give you tools. His probes have been very simple until now. Suddenly he comes up with his grand unified theory.
I started working with my father in the middle 60s. 10 years down the line, 1974, the publisher of Understanding Media had asked for a revision. So we started there and we finished with this project called Laws of Media. We were looking for universal laws, and we found only 4 that everything does. But these 4 questions ask you to look at what are the ripple effects? What other areas are affected, irrespective of the content? And you begin to realize media are like languages. That is, they're far more powerful than anything they're used to say. The idea that media and innovations and so on are human utterances with the properties of language, this is new. It's also extremely ancient. So the grammarian used language and the metaphor of language as a way of understanding the universe. He read the heavens as a text, he read the earth as a text, he tried to discover laws, and our laws of media are a new foray in that very ancient way of understanding.
Okay. So this is the visual rise and
Valéry, the symbolist poet, said of the movie, it is the complete, perfect, mechanical form of memory, visual memory. This is a fascinating and startling insight, to think of the movie as a form of memory storage. Now, anybody can see the book in that form. There's a certain sense in which the book is a storage system. The movie as a storage system, a visual storage system, a visual memory, points straight toward the computer as a storage system which takes on all the senses. The movie, though, as a complete visual memory, terrified people in 1900 because it seemed to rob them of all their natural mental functions. The world of circuitry, of electric circuits, takes people profoundly inside themselves, is a kind of entropic world. It folds us in. It creates a thing like the safety car. The safety car is the car turning in upon itself entropically, and entropy, you know, is the law of declining energies. The entropy turning inward upon itself, the safety car becomes a padded cell for maniacs to drive in. And most people, you know, are inclined to say when they hear about the safety car, but wouldn't anybody in a safety car go berserk? Wouldn't he just bump into everybody and everything? Isn't that a strange reaction? It's like you remember the old bump cars at the circuses? Some people tend to regard the safety car as a bump car in which you can really behave as if you're in a Sherman tank and you can just go rip-roaring around, knocking everybody helter-skelter. But the tendency then of the movie to become a kind of iconic form at first, and then gradually a high-fi, high-definition form, leads me to just say a word or two about the rise of the visual, because the movie represented our Western world going into very top-gear visual life, and now with TV we've slipped into very low-gear visual life with a resulting change of psychosomatic adjustment and change of mood. But I just want to say a couple of things, especially with an audience like this, interested both in the book and film and other forms. I just wanted to draw your attention to this aspect, that the work of people like Innes and Havelock's preface to Plato's sort of volume, and the work of Barfield in a book called Saving the Appearances, have drawn attention to the fact that with the rise of phonetic literacy, with the coming of phonetic literacy, people got a detachment from the world that the old native societies never were able to achieve. Phonetic literacy, by pushing up visual life into high intensity, gave people a form of detachment that was absolutely new in human history. It created the civilized man, the detribalized individual. And subsequent improvements in writing and printing and bookmaking intensified that detachment. Talking about the medium as the message or the massage, if you live in an intensely visual world, you learn the habits of civilized detachment. If you live in an intensely auditory and tactile world, you learn the habits of empathy and involvement.
Exactly our current society.
But Havelock describes in a most impressive way the stages by which the Greeks moved out of the world of Homer, the auditory, poetic world, into the world of Plato and the visual classification of ideas and data. This is now presumably a tape that is being played backwards. We are now rapidly, thanks to electronic technology, moving from the world of Plato back to the world of Homer. From the world of intense visual classification back to the world of intense auditory involvement.
Great video. Guys, I don't know. I think I may go ahead and cut. Ooh, that's a good one. Technological transformation. Sensory adjustment. Ah, man, all three of these are good ones. Do the mythic technology.
What's going to happen to, as a result of, say, the tremendous technological development, what's going to happen to the old American idea of pragmatism?
Of pragmatism? Well, the metaphor, it will always hold up. It just means experience, doing something. Don't do something, just stand there. Now, that is the new kind of pragmatism, because whatever you're likely to do could sort of be catastrophic, like pushing the wrong button. But pragmatism is merely the simple metaphor of activism, doing things, getting things done, and I don't think that any place or time in the world has ever been against pragmatism. I never heard of anybody being against pragmatism. Even Buddha was a pragmatist in the sense that what he set up as exercises were practical means of human happiness and well-being, very pragmatic. All Oriental ethics are very pragmatist. They're not based on any abstract theory, but entirely on practical results.
Would you say that the Oriental is a more interior type of person?
Of course.
Brought this battleground more within himself?
But he's not as interior as the electric man. You see, every time you open the paper, you read about new cults of inner life springing up. Drugs are simply an attempt, the lazy man's attempt at Buddhism. The inner trip. And they're taken like aspirin, just an aspirin spirit. But the inner trip is the new Orientalism of our world, you know. The electronic circuit world, you see, is an all inner. It's a complete feedback. Electric technology is all Buddhistic as such. But so is our nervous system. Electric technology is simply an extension of our own nervous system. Now we have our nervous system outside us. We can do things with that we couldn't do before. All previous technologies merely put outside our physical powers, our arms, our backs, our eyes, our ears. Electric technology puts the nervous system outside as an environment, information environment. So the inner trip results automatically.
But in a very masculine way.
No?
No?
Because we're going very feminine in the Western world.
See, think about that, guys. He's talking about the 60s and already talking about the technology, the feminization, the relativism. And impressive, no doubt.
Feminine, though, you see, means integral. That's imploded. Masculine means specialist, fragmented. That's exploded. Feminine means unified, integral. Masculine means fragmented, specialist, outer. At least it used to in our Western world. There's no need to divide the human powers quite so drastically as that anymore. Both can be both. And this creates confusion too, as you know. The homosexual is trying to be both masculine and feminine, and in a world that has long been specialist, masculine or feminine, creates great confusion. We haven't learned how to live with these things. But it's happening to us. You see, we are living mythically, but we still try to think rationally in the old 19th century pattern.
but our lives are actually conducted at mythic speeds and multi-levels of things happening many levels at once, as in a myth. The word, I think I've mentioned once, is mythos in Greek. Word is myth. In an information age, the whole culture becomes word. That's where the theologians need to heed the meaning of this time. Because sooner or later it's going to have some relation to the divine word. I think sooner. Since it is very much the wish of the divine word that this should be. This could be the greatest religious age in all human history, maybe the last.
So that's going to conclude our stream, guys. Again, if you want to watch these last two videos, which are incredible, they're really great, I recommend you use the links that I'm putting into the live chat right now. So you can use these links to watch these last two videos that I had. We just run out of time here. It's already an hour and 50 in. I apologize, guys. I had so much I was trying to get to in a very quick and orderly way, but you know how Marshall McLuhan is. I can listen to his stuff all day long. It's just every time I listen, there's more insight. So I'm going to get into the super chats real quick, guys. Please smash that like. Hope everybody enjoyed tonight's stream. Smash that like. First super chat, we got to give a special shout out to Genghis Khan. The Genghis Khan threw in $9.99 before the stream even started and threw in another $5. Shout out to Genghis Khan. Thank you so much, the great Khan, for your generosity and your support for the work here. So I really, really, really give you thanks for your generosity. Super chatting before the stream even started. So shout out to Genghis Khan. No comments there. Next super chat comes from Disgruntled Docs. Shout out to Disgruntled Docs, my homie. He says, Instagram likes and follow counts gives us a sense of some form of fake celebrity status that feeds one's ego. Had a downfall into this. Grateful I lost my old page and made me humble. Whoa, 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 whoa. Amen to that, Disgruntled Docs. I love that. Let me read that again one more time. Disgruntled Docs, my homie, throws in $5 and says, Instagram likes and follow counts gives us a sense of some form of fake celebrity status that feeds one's ego. Had a downfall into this. Grateful I lost my old page and made me humble. So I totally agree with that. Shout out to Disgruntled Docs. And go follow his new page on Instagram if you can. Follow his stuff. We got another Orthodox homie over there. Next super chat comes from the Buck Johnson. Shout out to Buck Johnson, guys. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. I just filmed a podcast episode with Buck Johnson earlier today on the NPC, on Orthodoxy, on all types of stuff. So if you would like to see that video, make sure you go follow Buck Johnson over on his YouTube channel and follow his podcast. Buck Johnson throws in $5 and says, brilliant, DPH. Thank you for this. Well, thank you so much, Buck, for the support. And thanks again, brother, for having me on your platform. Really appreciate it. Next super chat comes from Rebecca Dawn. Rebecca Dawn throws in $5. Thank you so much, Rebecca Dawn. And she says, deepest gratitude. You helped guide me to orthodoxy. Well, glory be to God, Rebecca. If I did anything, that is God using me for his purposes. So glory to God. That's incredible, Rebecca. I'm so glad that you have found orthodoxy and are inquiring into that living reality. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for the $5. Again, throws in a very sweet super chat that says, deepest gratitude. You helped me to orthodoxy. Well, God did that. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Your own search for truth did that. If I aided in any way, I'm very humbled. Next super chat comes from the Bone Man 538. Throws in $20. Shout out to the Bone Man 538. And he says the inversion of the depersonalization is the stabbies, the jibby jabs. In that, if you want to continue holding the office of the person, you must put on the mask of their creation, thereby being subject to the rules of personhood. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think what you're saying, I get it. The depersonalization is the stabbies. One, they're going to kill you. They're experimenting on you. They're making you a GMO. And then they want you to put on the depersonalizing face mask, the slave symbol. And so that's absolutely it. And you know the majority of the people going along with the mask, you know that anybody still wearing a mask in a way is an NPC. Whether they go to your church or not, we need to pray for them, care for them. Don't hate anybody. But in 2022, the people that are still wearing surgical masks to protect them from a virus, we know that they have bought into the narrative. They have, as digital, again, through the TV, because they're boomers, TV generation, they have already entered into Wonderland. No doubt about that. So great comment. Again, Boneman538, the inversion of the depersonalization is the stabbies, in that if you want to continue holding the office of the person, you must put on the mask of their creation, thereby being subject to the rules of their personhood. Yeah, the lack of personhood. Absolutely, man. Boneman538, great super chat. Thank you so much. Next super chat comes from The Green Feathers. Shout out to Nick of The Green Feathers. God bless you and your family, brother. Hope you are doing well. He throws in $10 and says, God bless. And everybody, send in the super chat, send in a congratulations to The Green Feathers. He got a new job. He was hired. So shout out to The Green Feathers. God bless you and your family, man. And congratulations on the new career path. Hope everything continues to go well, man. Stay in contact. And thank you so much, man. The Green Feathers, Nick has been a continual supporter of the stream. Thank you very, very much, brother. I really, really appreciate it. Again, God bless you and your family, man. Everybody in the chat, give the Green Feathers a shout out and congratulations for his new career. Excellent, excellent. So next super chat, shout out to Nick of the Green Feathers again. Last super chat, this is the last super chat here, is from Michael and Maria, the Michael and Maria. Shout out to Michael and Maria, great couple. Says, another great stream. I wanted to dig into McLuhan for a while. The medium is the message, has been on my desk for a while. That and Jung's man and his symbols, very critical ideas as we stand on the principles of a transhumanist new world order. No doubt about that. Michael and Maria, again, a based ortho couple down in the South. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Michael and Maria, you guys have been continual supporters of Church of the Eternal Logos, and I really appreciate you. You went to the book club, you've watched my streams, you send in super chats. Thank you so much, Michael and Maria. I really, really appreciate everything that you guys do for me, and that includes everybody who's super chatted, you know. I really appreciate it. So again, special shout out to Michael and Maria. Special shout out to Nick of the Green Feathers. God bless you, brother, and congratulations on your new job. Shout out to Boneman538 for the super chat. Shout out to Rebecca Don. Shout out to Buck Johnson. Go subscribe and follow his stuff. Shout out to Disgruntled Docs. Go follow him over on Instagram. And shout out to the Genghis Khan. And really appreciate all you guys. Thank you for your support. It means a lot, guys. I put my work in, try to put these streams together, and I just love that you guys appreciate it, and really appreciate you for your, the super chats, you being here, participating, liking the stream, sharing it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. And so, guys, that's going to do it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed. Again, don't forget to smash that like, share this stream. I think we didn't have a whole lot of people tonight, but I think this was a great stream. Again, I think this topic, this information is really, really deep and insightful and useful for a lot of people. So if you can help me out, share the stream, get more eyeballs on it. And I will be back Friday night on a stream on the spirituality of Russell Brand, a sponsored stream. So really looking forward to that. So as always, guys, special shout out to all the super chats. Thank you, Michael, Maria. Thank you, the Green Feathers. Thank you, Boneman538. Thank you, Rebecca Don. Thank you, Buck Johnson. Thank you, Disgruntled Dots. And thank you, Genghis Khan. So, as usual, until next time, which will be Friday